Hello, everyone, and welcome to horrornightoasis. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Ian. Ian, are you there?
I hope so.
It's
It just cut
starting
off
to
for
be
a second.
one of those episodes where everything's starting to fall apart as soon as we hit record. But we are here. Ian is child free, and he's living the life. And what better way to celebrate that than to discuss some horror? And that's what we're doing here tonight. Um, we're sort of a day past our usual recording days, due to the fact that I was at a convention yesterday and I didn't get back until late, and I was dead tired once I got in. But it was a long, interesting day. It was enjoyable. Might as well get into it. I did attend Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky. Um, and it was a yeah, it was a fun show. It was definitely uh, more put together when it came to lines, I would say, because last year, um, the way that they handled lines, it was a little rough. Again, I got there early, so I was like very, last year and this year. I arrived early and I stood in line for 3 hours because I didn't want to stand in a line that wrapped around the building, down the sidewalk, all the way around Rump Arena, you know, um, because that's how it was last year. It just wrapped around the arena. Um, and again, luckily, I got there early, like three hours early last year, 3 hours early this year, and this year the did it sort of more easier because you walk in, you get your wristband if you're general admission, and then you go down the escalator, and then you go to the right hand hallway, and then that's basically where the line started. So people would come down the line, and again, I stood there for 3 hours. I didn't stand there. I sat there for 3 hours until they started to roll call us in, and right around 10 till 11, that's when they started to line people up to get ready to go back up the escalator and then go back onto the vendor floor. And that's what I did for a solid. I think I left around 3 ish, so I get like 4 hours there. But because I don't really go there anymore for the autographs. Even though this year there was a lot that I was interested in because there was some people that from not Return of the Living Dead and the Monster Squad. And earlier in my convention days, I was trying to get all of those people, all the guests on the VHS of my Monster Squad and Return of the Living Dead. And it's just like it's got to the point. Like the last autograph I got was Clu Gulliger in 2019, and that was hard pressed for me to really spend the money on it, because it was just like, man, I don't really want to know. I really don't know about it, but I kind of like, okay, he's getting up there in age, and so I figured, okay, this will be my one special one for this event. Again, that was before the whole again pandemic era, but it was just like, all right, that was cool. I got to meet him. He died a few years later, so it was kind of worth it because I got him and I have Don Calfa, and they're both passed on now. So it was always good to do that. And also, and then the Monster Squad, I got most of the people from Monster Squad on it, but they had like all the monsters this year besides Tom Noonan. Um, and I was like, man, that's hard to pass up because I really wanted to do that. But for this year, I kind of there was another VHS that I've been working on, and that's my Dawn of the Dead, and I've pretty much got basically everyone except for David Emge. Um, and the fact I could have gotten David Emge because he was at a Fright Night Film Fest at um, Louisville. It was a hotel in Louisville, and he was. It was Night of the Creeps reunion, Dawn of the Dead reunion, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 reunion. And also, I believe that was the year I think there was some. No, I wanted to say that was Monster Squad was there too, but I could be wrong on that. But I met everyone, and then and then they all left for a panel. Or I was doing other stuff, and they were coming back from a panel, and David Emge never came back to his table for the rest of the con, and so I never was able to get him. He didn't show up at any other conventions at a Fright Night or a Scarefest, because I think the following year Scott Renninger showed up at Scarefest because they were doing a George Romero sort of reunion where they had George, Adrian Barbeau, Tom Atkins, John Amplas, basically, all those that were involved in George Romero film. And then, of course, George was there as well. I think that was 2012, somewhere in there. And so, like, he never showed up at another convention near me, at least. And then, again, he passed away a few years back, and it kind of sucks. But I guess now I got a story I'm gonna remember more than the autograph on the VHS. So I guess he did leave me with that little nugget of information. But anyway, I decided of the main cast, I only needed Galen Ross, and she was there, and I really was hard pressed to get it, because again, I don't really like to shell out autograph money anymore, because I like to spend the money towards like DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff for the collection.
Yeah.
But I ended up paying the price and meeting Galen Ross, and again, I'm happy I did. She was nice and very sweet, and I enjoyed talking with her for the time I was there, because there was no one there at her line. Again, I went on a Sunday, so it was kind of easy and free to move around. It wasn't as congested as it kind of was last year around Sunday. So I met Galen. I talked to her. She liked she was like complimenting, like, "Oh, you got George's autograph. That's great." And she was just complimentary of the VHS and talking about the zombie movies. And I was telling her like how Dawn of the Dead was like probably like the earliest zombie movie I watched when I was younger, because again it showed on like the Sci-Fi Channel and all that stuff, and it was just like kind of the film that got me into zombie movies, because I just loved how berserk it kind of went. Again, as a young child, it is kind of not child friendly, to say the least, because like when the air blood pressure scene with the motorcycle gang and all the other crazy gore that's in that film, it's like definitely is not good for a child, but I loved it, and I fell in love with the film. So I kind of told her that, and she, like I said, she was very nice, and really enjoyed meeting her, so it's kind of worth it. And basically now I got the VHS is as complete as it's going to get, because of David Emge passing. So I'm happy with that, and putting that VHS to rest and retire it now. So because it has everyone else on it. Even David Crawford, who's passed away as well. So it's like, again, some good names on there that's no longer with us. And then I met Joe Castro, who is another one that, again, in my high school days, that's a director I didn't know much about, because I was like, that was my early, like always trying to find like the low budget indie horror stuff. And Joe Castro, it's just a name you don't know, and then you get a little bit, familiar with the genre, and like, oh, this is the same dude, And so like the very first, early on films I've watched of his was Near Death, and because I remember seeing that one at like I think it was like a Walmart $5 bin. I was like, what is this? This sounds awesome. And so of course you picked it up as as a budding horror collector, you want to see as much as you can. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And then it kept going on. There's a video store near me that I always went over there, and I bought like a bunch of Brain Damage films. And then like one of the trailers on the Brain Damage films was Terror Tunes, and like, oh man, I gotta see this because this looks awesome. And then finally I got around to seeing Terror Tunes, and I had fun with it because it's just a campy, gory, low budget schlocky movie, without their effects and gore, and it's stupid fun. And so that kind of, again, you watch so many brain damage films, they all kind of just like, yeah, that's fine. And it just kept going. Like I came across Jackhammer Massacre, and like I really like Jackhammer Massacre. It's like one of those, like, not only many people talk about it, it's just one of those, for me, like one of those high school staples. Whereas, like, man, this is fun. I watched it with my grandmother when I bought the VHS, and I was just like, I had fun with it. It's gory. He's going around. He's on drugs, and he's just killing people with a jackhammer. There's like a good jackhammering scene, like in someone's face and body. It's fun. It's one of those that's just sort of under the radar for like mid-thousands horror films, slasher movies. Doesn't get really that much discussion. So if you haven't seen Jackhammer Massacre, I suggest it. So anyway, I ran up to Joe, talked to him, and he was a swell guy as well. He was really considerate as well, and I enjoyed talking to him. I picked up Ceremony, which was one of the last ones that I needed of his filmography, and then I picked up the Terror Tunes quadrilogy, 4-film set with Terror Tunes 1 through 4, because again, Terror Tunes 3 I don't think was officially released on anything. I don't remember ever seeing a DVD of it. And so like I needed 3 to go with everything else, and then so it made sense. And again, the it wasn't a bad, it's a fun time talking to Joe and all that. That was the only 2 people I met. And then basically the rest of the con, again, I kind of did the autographs last, so I'm going backwards. But I walked the con, and I walked to Terrence Muncie, who does the artwork. There's like a trading card game that they've been doing for like the past 3-4 years. And but I go there because he's also an indie film director, and I've brought a bunch of his films there. He autographed them. And this is the year that he finally completed Final Cut, which was his newest film. And he was working on it. I believe he was starting to work on it like 2 years ago. And then he was supposed to get it last year, but he wasn't finished all the way. So he waited another year, and it's released, now. And so I picked up Final Cut. Again, it's always great talking to Terrence. He's a cool guy. And then I just walked the floor and stopped at the Dark Sky booth, because last year they were at the entrance of the convention floor, and they had the 250 DVD bin, which is just, again, 250 DVD, not 250, but 2 for 5, basically 2 for 5 DVD bin. And they just had so many titles, just I stocked up last year. And I did the same thing this year, just going through there. They didn't have as wide of a selection compared to last year, because I got a lot of like titles off my want list last year, but it was still a good selection. I'm not going to complain. Filled some gaps that, a few that I was after as well, but not like the good, fun choices that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is there, that's there. I got Witching and Bitching, which I've been after for a while. Just a bunch of ones that, I've been wanting to see. Prey, which is the killer boar movie from France. And just a bunch of them last year. But this year, I still went through, they had 3 bins, and I got through, all those, grabbed them. Again, then I think I spent like $55 for like a stack of movies, so that's not too bad. Because again, I'm spending money on myself over autographs, so I'm able to have a little fun. And then I walked over to Horrorland Media's table, and Justin, who's the owner, and again, he's been there for the past, probably since they came back from the pandemic. He's been there, and I've always flocked to his booth because he's got awesome titles, to me anyway. They're low budget, schlocky horror movies. Most of them are, but it's like the stuff that I collect and go after. And so he managed. I keep in contact with him on Facebook, leading up to maybe a month or so before the event, and always like, hey man, I can't wait to see you. I hope everything's good. Safe travel, stuff like that. And I get there, I got my stuff. I look through the tables and the boxes and grab some more titles that I didn't see the first time through. And then he was premiering his Mother Shucker 2, the sequel to Mother Shucker. And so I picked that up, and his prior film Twisted Gables, which hopefully I get around to checking out. So again, it's always great talking to him and just shooting the breeze. And then basically that was it. I was just roaming the floors, just looking at vendor tables. Again, I just went looking for movies and just talking to people about, just like horror stuff. Let's see, I think I stopped at the Bloodlust and Bourbon podcast table because I talked to them last year and just wanted to catch up with them. So that, they're local as well. I think they're in the Lexington area. So it was cool to check out with them. And just a few other people that I just, that also set up booths there and fun to talk to. And it was just a fun experience. It usually is. I mean, because I'm not really going there and waiting in line. That I did that when I was first starting out in conventions, and I didn't really want to do that because I kind of lost interest in the autograph scene. No harm to those who do that. I mean, everyone has their first con, or and I've been going to conventions since 2008 when the second Scarefest started, and it's been nonstop since then. But I've just kind of eased back. I got a bunch of autographs early, so I'm kind of like not really. I'm just getting a few like little cleanup autographs here and there, and of course, again, money issues as well, because you're not gonna. It's not as it once was. I'll just say that, where you're able to get a lot for a good amount, but now it's kind of difficult to get as many as you want now, especially ones that you'd like to clean up with, especially as I mentioned earlier with Return of the Living Dead and the Monster Squad. I really would have enjoyed to finish those off, but just not into that anymore. But yeah, it was a fun show. Just again, I went there for by myself. It was just have a fun time, pick up stuff, add it to the collection, and again, I'm happy with the two people I meet with Galen and Joe, and so it definitely. And again, like Joe was awesome. Like he was just like he was awesome. He so I really do appreciate the gesture, the kind gesture of Joe and Galen. So if you do get a chance, if you ever see Galen or Joe at a convention, even just swing by, say hi, because he's an awesome guy, especially if you're into that sort of low budget horror gore stuff. He's definitely up there. So he's cool, and yeah, like really not much else happened at the con. It wasn't as crowded compared to previous Scarefests. But yeah, it was decent, and I came home and I passed out, so wasn't able to do a show last night. So that's my Scarefest recap. Again, it's not the most engaging, but when you don't really go after autographs and you're just there for DVDs and Blu-rays and supporting like indie directors and vendors, I mean, there's not really much to say, but again, I still appreciate the ones that I did see with Galen and Joe. So that's going to do it for this Scarefest recap. And so, Ian, you got any words on that before we move on to our main event?
I mean, I get not we are being more cautious about getting autographs considering everything has gone up, and especially with like like DVDs and everything, since that's all going up, it's sometimes you're like, this might not ever, a movie might not exist like in stores in a couple of years. You never know. So I see wanting to,
Well, I come to the point now where it's like I'll look back at some of the autographs that I got like on my early days of collecting autographs, and I'm just like thinking like, is this doing me any good now? Like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the autograph when I got it, but now I'm looking at it like, I could have gotten like one of those indie movies there at that con instead of getting the autograph that I kind of wanted. But like there's definitely one year at Scarefest where like there was like a indie company promoting their movie, and like I didn't really have the fun. I was younger. I was like, I think I was in my 20s. And I was just like, I really want the autograph. But like now, like I can't remember that movie for the life of me. And it's just like it's just in the ether, and I can't remember it. And I kind of wish I got the movie over the autograph. And it's just like it's that that mentality I have now, where like, is the autograph? Am I gonna really remember this autograph in years to come? And like some, again, I've sprinkled it through, like how I did with like Clue Gulliger and this year. Like those are gonna have more of an impact on me because they're special to me. Like when I went and met Clue Gulliger, like, you want to wear my hat? He wasn't able to talk because he was having a problem with his voice. He was, and so like, you want to wear the hat? And he just put his hat on me. So I'm gonna remember that. And plus, it's like, again, another one of my favorite zombie movies, Return of the Living Dead, and just like to have that little interaction there. Like, I'm gonna remember that. And it's just like I'm gonna remember like little key moments, and like some of the earlier stuff when I was just like going mainly for autographs, it was just like, here's an autograph, move on, with some of them. And again, I don't want to get into names, but it's just like, I'm not going to remember that. I barely remember the interaction of them just like signing it and moving me on to the next autograph to the person behind me.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to remember the movies, that I bought because they're in my collection. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was when I bought it that year. I'm going to have,
I mean, that VHS is pretty cool, though.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's going to be one day going to be worth a nice little chunk of change, too. Since, if you ever,
Oh, yeah, because it has, George's autograph now is kind of, you're not going to get it anymore.
Exactly.
And David Crawford, again, another one you won't get anymore. Again, it sucks that I missed out on David, but again, I have the story of David not coming to his table. So technically, like I said, I have that story. Whether if I met him beforehand, I just like, oh yeah, he signed it. It's on the VHS. But like, I'm gonna have that story to go along with like why I don't have David in me. So technically, he's a part of it, but not officially.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, again, if you've been at the signature autographs for a while, I mean, you're kind of gonna ease back and just get the ones that are important. Like, again, Robert Englund's there. He was there like in 2017 when they had the Phantasm reunion, and like I could have saw Robert Englund, but I decided to see Tim Ritter, indie, one of the pioneers of shot on video horror, and support him in his next project and buy stuff off his table because I have more of a connection with watching Tim Ritter stuff than I do with Robert Englund. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate Robert Englund and everything he's done, but I just like, you have more of a connection to certain people, like you grow up differently. Like some people watch Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street constantly when they're younger. Like I didn't start until like, again, I've seen a few, on TV here and there, but like I didn't fully watch the entire series until I was like in high school, when I started VHS collecting. But I was watching Tim Ritter stuff way before that, because I was renting it at the video store. before eventually owning his stuff. So it's like I was always going to the video store. I think I mentioned this in years prior, and especially when we interviewed Tim Ritter, early days of the show. But like I was renting his stuff on weekends and watching it with my grandma. I watched Wicked Game. I rented that. Truth or Dare, a bunch of his stuff, and I was just watching it on the weekend with my grandma, and just like I was more in tune with that style. That's kind of what got my appreciation for the indie stuff and the low budget stuff. Again, that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's made me, again, sort of directed me into the person I am, and to kind of where I'm like leading with the show of like how we like watch like the lower stuff and like the films that like not everyone's going to watch. And of course, especially the ones that are harder to find and the obscure that we do on the Boneyard, because that's like where I thrive. Again, I love horror. I appreciate horror, and the genre itself. And it's just like I really like the deep dive into the underground stuff. And but yeah, that's I'm going on another tangent there. But yeah, that's gonna do it for Scarefest and just in general. But it was a good time, and I appreciate the ones that I talked to and everyone else that I talked to there. But yeah, Ian, we are ready to move on, as it is finally time to do our Halloween grab bag marathon pick of the week. And there was a couple choices I was interested in. I even said to you last week, like, I'm thinking about we can do a slasher. And I was like, well, we can always do a slasher anytime, even if it's Halloween or not. Sometimes you just want to do something different. And there really wasn't much info on the choice that we had. Because I want to kind of go into these a little bit blind. And again, it just like the setup was interesting, and like it sounded like a decent story that was going to be presented. And that's the reason I changed it over to our film tonight, which is Pumpkinhole. And Pumpkinhole, we are introduced to Nick. And Nick is a retired baseball star from years prior. He won some kind of championship, but now he's kind of just down on his luck. He used to be an alcoholic, and then he just sobered up, and he's just going around. He's looking for work. He's talking to people. He finds a job in some kind of machinery factory where he inserts like plastics into objects, something like that. And so he's just going on his daily routine. He also works at a sort of a shop called Tony's, sort of a quick stop shop in a sense, a little small town shop. And so he was starting to work there, and then out of the blue, it's coming up on the Halloween season. He starts seeing these hallucinations of just pumpkins it's just sitting around. And of course he's like, why is there a pumpkin? Like, is this a joke? He's talking to his co-workers like, hey man, is this a joke? And the lights are flashing, everything like that, and he starts to get more hallucinations of the pumpkins and a small child as well. And this brings up manifestations of a year prior of an incident that he was involved in, where he was driving home on Halloween and got into an accident. And so it's, again, a year later now, and he's working at Tony's, and he sees the mother of the child that was in the incident that happened, Claudia. And so he is starting to trying to make amends with Claudia, but without giving stuff away that he was involved in the incident with her child. And so it's just basically that for a while where he's sort of like trying to talk to her, be friendly, conversation, um, just ease into like, hey, what's going on? How are you? I'm sorry about what happened last year. And he's just kind of being coy about it. And while also dealing with these hallucinations, it's also giving him um, this somber feeling of and a guilt weighing on his heart for what he did because he didn't he didn't call it in. He did something else to it. I don't want to give away. And so he's just kind of having these repressed feelings and just mulling around the town, just like trying to cope with his actions. And that's technically the gist of the movie of Pumpkinhole. And overall, I this is a slow burn. It's a very slow, sort of methodical, just like you're watching, Nick just kind of just suffer the wrath of his consequences. Um, and it does a good job of just like again, it's not it's not the type of film, like I said, it's very somber. It's just you're just watching this, this guy just go through hell in a sense in his mind and just like trying to figure out what is the right thing to do in the situation that I've caused. Um, he's like again trying to make amends with Claudia without giving too much away, um, and just dealing with this issues of seeing the pumpkins and uh, the what's his name, Jacob is the son of Claudia, and just like seeing images of him in his Halloween costume and just trying to fight or trying to push himself past this struggle and find out what is right to do. And they do a good job with that story in general. Um, it's just again a very methodical, just slow paced, slow burn film. Um, and again, I thought it was a decent sort of drama, horror drama um, film. Sort of in a sense, it's sort of similar to like The Apology. Um, I forgot who's in that one. I don't. But that one's more Christmas, and that involves a brother and sister, and something that happened with the brother. Well, the the mother's child died in that film in mysterious circumstances, and then the brother comes along and he's trying to make amends to the situation at hand. So it's very similar to that film in tone, where something happened and trying to get it out to said person that lost the child. And it's the same way with this one, but it's taking place on the anniversary on Halloween. And there's some good moments. I think it just kind of loses itself towards the last act and conclusion because it's like you're on this journey with Nick and just you're wanting to see where it goes and what he does and what eventually happens with uh quote unquote the pumpkin hole. But once they get to that last act, it kind of fizzles a little bit and it sort of turns into like a little bit artsy in its execution, and I felt like it kind of got a little. It tried a little too hard with what it wanted to accomplish at that last act. I mean, like I said, I get what they're going for, um, but it got a little muddled that last act there. But Ian, I'll let you give your thoughts, and then we'll go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely very slow in the middle. I felt like it kind of dragged on a little bit. But I thought it was interesting, like the direction they were going with it. I just think I was expecting something a little more. But I do, appreciate a good psychological movie every so often. But yeah, I mean, there's not. It's a really simple movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not overly complex. There's nothing really to like get, sink your teeth into. That just, is just very straightforward. Movie about a man who made a mistake and kept making a mistake, and it ate at him until what happens. And that's not a bad story, but there's just some parts I thought kind of like the some of his interactions with some people, I just felt like went on a little longer than they should have. But I mean, it's just nitpicking because it's, there's not a whole lot. Some things I was a little confused about, but that's getting into like spoiler territory. Can't talk today. So, we'll probably kind of save that for later if, we get into
Yeah.
spoilers, like big spoilers. So, but it was a fine movie. I mean, it was serviceable. I didn't hate it. I mean, my biggest complaint is that it was a little slow. But
Yeah, like you said, it. I mean, it's supposed to be that way because again, like grief is always going to hang on you, so it's always going to hold you down. So I get the idea behind it. And again, I kind of wish that they went a little bit more into the Pumpkinhole scenario. I mean, they give you a little bit of clues here and there. When the talk about like when he's watching TV and he talks about, you hear the narrator talk about the history of like portals. So I like, again, it's like it's not much, but there's a little bit of information there that kind of comes into play towards the last act. But again, it just, that last act's kind of where it just kind of loses steam, in my opinion, because I'm liking the build up and I'm liking the narrative of Nick and his grief and trying to make amends with Claudia. The hallucinations of the pumpkins are pretty cool. Jacob showing up in his Halloween costume in various places, haunting him because it's in the back of his mind. He's trying to forget about it, but it's just there. And it just gets to a point where it just kind of like takes like a weird Lynch ending, David Lynch, where it gets a little, Inland Empire, where it throws a lot of things, and it just like it felt like maybe if the budget was a little bit more, they could get away with it, and like make it more structural in tone. But where it is, I mean, it's kind of lacks its narrative, and like I said, gets a little too broad for its shoulders, where it's trying to introduce, various timelines, and it's just like it just seems like out of nowhere. Now we're in various timelines, and it's just like it just kind of like takes you out a little bit, and then it just like kind of doesn't make sense for some parts. Like again, it's structural is okay, and then it's just when he writes the note, that's when it gets a little off-putting. But like you said, it's fine and it is serviceable. So again, if you like that sort of more drama, psychological, grief-stricken horror stuff, it's a decent film. It does, like I said, it just, that ending just kind of, it's hit or miss. And I mean, even if you do pay attention and you listen, hear all the clues and details that's prior, I mean, still, it's like they're doing a lot of stuff with various incarnations of a character. Like, okay, now you lost me, because they're introducing a lot of timelines, and it gets confusing. And again, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's on us, but I felt like I paid attention pretty damn well. But it still got to the point like, okay, where are we at? I mean, is it just timelines in general? This one's he's a loser. This one he's okay. Is it sort of that scenario that we're looking at here? So it's definitely one of those you just kind of have to be lenient towards that ending, because it's kind of just out. I wouldn't say it's out there, but it's just like
Yeah.
not the turn you expected.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, the ending was probably the most confusing for me because it kind of just pops up,
Yeah.
and I was just like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, it
Kind of
just
felt
kept
like the end of
interchanging the different
Jumanji.
moments in time with Nick, and like I don't know. It just didn't come off of the way it you know supposed to be, I guess, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's just there's just too much kind of like you said, it's just 1 minute it was one thing and then it turned around and went somewhere else. And I'm like, there was no clear like transition between what timeline it was it in the past, the future, and then an alternate timeline. It just was kind of just confuddled a little bit.
Yeah.
I just wish it was a little bit more clear. I did like the pumpkin aspect of it. Like, I liked how they were trying to tie that into the story. And that was fine. I think that dude is the main character is kind of a piece of shit for like, yeah, I killed your son, but I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to have an entire relationship and listen to you talk about how bad you miss your son. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, dude, you're such a shitty person. I was like, so I did not care for the main character, so I didn't care what happened.
Yeah.
But and even that kind of came out of nowhere. Like I get it. I get why, but like it just was like just felt so sudden. Like I wish there was just a tiny bit more build up.
Yeah, because like she just walks into the store and he's peeking on her through the shelving, and then like, oh, I got to make amends with her now. And it's like the very next time when she comes in there and gets propane, and like, oh, I'm not going to charge her for the propane. And then that's when he starts like sort of creeping on her.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they're trying to build makes Nick a sympathetic character, but again, like because like again the accident caused him because he was an alcoholic beforehand, where he partied a lot, due to the fact that again he was a baseball star, but like he just kind of I don't even know what I was saying. Uh, well, there's a brain fart.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just like they're trying with the sympathetic aspects of his character, and it's just like again like there's the scene where like he's doing the drug testing, the urine testing, and like, oh, I might take you up on it. And like, why? You're sober. Why would you want to go back to that route? Like I thought he was clean, and like all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, I might do that later. Unless that was just like a kind gesture to the guy saying, "Oh, I got a friend that can pee for you." You know, I don't
Yeah.
know. It just came off like, "Oh yeah, I might do that," meaning that he would go back and relapse at some point in time. Um, Again, it doesn't happen, but it's just like the onset of like it's a possibility in his mind. Um, but yeah, like he's not the most the best person to root for. Even given his struggles and what he's going through and his life, you know, out of his hands basically. Just
Yeah.
dealing with a bunch of hard stuff. But I mean, it's like I said, it's a decent watch. I mean, it's nothing amazing. It's a slow burn. Um, it just kind of doesn't pack a punch towards the end where you're hoping it leads to. Because again, it has a nice journey. Uh, that middle section does, and you're just like you're interested in see what eventually it leads to. What is the
Yeah.
pumpkin hole, and why is you know why is the child haunting him? Of course we understand why he's haunting him, but like like where did it come from? It just out of the recesses of nowhere. Just he's having the memories of what happened, and it just didn't seem like again it was like he was seeing, again, it's weighing heavy on his mind, but like there wasn't like too much of like like this is, like I'm haunting you, this is just like, I guess, just like relapses of like, look at what you did basically, um, and make do with it what you will. Um, but yeah, it's again, it's a very somber watch. Um, there's really not really anything uplifting about the film either. So it's definitely like I said, just it's I wouldn't say it's like depressing, but it's just again a very moody, somber piece. Watching a guy just hit the wall and just continue to hit the wall, down into the gutters. Um, but yeah, it's fine. Um, Ian, any final thoughts or anything else you want to talk about?
I think we covered everything that really could be
Well,
covered.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess with that, we will put an end to Pumpkinhole and get into our candy rating. And I believe you went last week. So this week, again, I kind of had an idea before the film when it was starting. But then it reached that ending, and then it just like, I really thought about it. Like, you know what? It makes perfect sense to me. And so my candy rating is a warhead because you have the sour start of dealing with the mood of the movie and the grief and the stricken and all the stuff like that. Then once you get that sour coating off, you have a decent ride for a while with the sweet candy that's not, of course, the sweet part of the warheads. And you're tasting it, and it's going down and going down and going down. You're really enjoying it, and then the center breaks through, and you get to the end, and it has that fizzy center where it just fizzles, and it just like, well, it's still not bad, but man, that last part just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And so my choice is a warhead.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm gonna go with my candy of choice. Honestly, it popped up into my head like right when I was at the end of the movie. Um, was a pumpkin peep. Like, I mean, it fit the movie, but and I say that because it has a lot. It's just a lot of fluff, not much flavor, but it is a little sweet. So it's got like, it's got your little sugary coating on it, but it's like it's not something that you want to eat the whole pack of and keep eating it. I'm usually like a one peep and I'm done kind of person, and some people love peeps. I'm not a big fan, but like I do have weird cravings for them every so often. So I was like, I felt like this fit because because all the fluff that's in the middle kind of reminded me
Yeah.
of all the fluff that was kind of in this movie. Not necessarily bad. I mean, the fluff is like the biggest part of what makes it what it is. But it is, it's a little sweet, and it's serviceable for, it's a little snacks. So I just felt like that was the most appropriate one.
Yeah, that again, I think they both work in both of our opinions. But yeah, that is gonna do it for our Halloween grab bag marathon this week. We got, I believe, a couple more shows before we one more before our big Halloween Boneyard review. Spoilers. So Ian, as always, it's great talking with you, and I hope you get some
Likewise.
more rest. I know you've been wild and crazy, and I know it shows
Oh yeah.
sometimes, but as always, it's always wonderful to talk with you. And I appreciate everyone
Likewise.
else for listening. I mean, this was actually one of the longer episodes, but again, I went and talked about Scarefest. So if you made it this far, we appreciate you listening. And we will see you next time as we continue on the Halloween Grab Bag Marathon here on Horror Night Oasis.
Good night.